Wow, it's really raining cats and dogs out there, isn't it? Raining cats and dogs is an example of an idiom you should not be using in IELTS speaking because it's not very natural and most native speakers don't use it. So what idioms should you be using? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you 10 idioms that actually sound natural, which can help you to improve your band score in IELTS speaking. But before we start, if you want a step-by-step guide for how to get a band 7 in every part of IELTS, make sure you check out our preparation course in the description below. All right, so let's get started. The first thing we need to talk about is what an idiom actually is. So an idiom is a group of words with a meaning that's different from the literal meaning of each word. So for example, hit the books doesn't mean physically hitting or punching books. It means to study hard. So idioms are very common in spoken English and they can help you sound more natural in the IELTS speaking test. So now let's have a look at some examples. Let's start with the first one, which is cost an arm and a leg. Now, if something costs an arm and a leg, do you think that thing is expensive or cheap? Correct, it's probably expensive because your arms and your legs are very important. So that is the meaning of this idiom. It simply means to be very expensive, to cost a lot of money. Now, let me show you how you can use this idiom for a question in IELTS speaking. So let's pretend that the examiner says, is there anything you don't like about the area where you live? Well, you could say something like this. Yeah, the rent is probably the worst part. It's a fantastic area which has everything I need, but honestly, it costs an arm and a leg just to live in a small apartment. Plus, my rent keeps going up every year, so I'm considering dirt, 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 dirt. So when the speaker says costs an arm and a leg just to live in a small apartment, that means the rent is very expensive. And after that, the speaker says the rent keeps going up as well. Now, when it comes to the pronunciation of this idiom, we don't say cost an arm and a leg. All of the sounds come together. So we say cost an arm and a leg, cost an arm and a leg. So for example, my rent costs an arm and a leg, costs an arm and a leg. Now, so this idiom is a great idiom to use if you're talking about something that's really expensive. Only use this idiom when something is really expensive, not just a little bit expensive. So for example, if your coffee goes up by 50 cents, that's not an arm and a leg. But if you have to pay, $2,000 for your new phone, okay, then yes, this would be a good time to use an arm and a leg. Now let's move on to the second idiom, which is a piece of cake. Now you might have heard this one before because it's a very common idiom. This one simply means to be very easy or simple to do. Now, this one comes from the idea that eating cake is very easy and enjoyable. So when something is a piece of cake, it means that thing is very simple or even effortless to do. So now let's have a look at how we can use this idiom for a real answer in IELTS speaking. Let's pretend that the examiner says, are you good at using technology? Well, you could say something like, yeah, I'd say I'm pretty good with it. I grew up using computers and smartphones, so most tech stuff is a piece of cake for me. So this is simply saying most technology is very easy. Even when I get a new device, I can usually figure it out without needing help or reading the manual. So just remember, if something is super easy, whether it's a subject, a task, or even a test, you can say it's a piece of cake. But don't use it for things that are just a little bit easy. All right, let's move on to idiom number 3 now, which is once in a blue moon. Now, this idiom means something that happens very rarely. Now, you might be thinking, what is a blue moon? Well, a blue moon is the name for a second full moon in a single calendar month. And that happens very rarely, probably once every 2 to 3 years. So that's why the phrase once in a blue moon came to mean something that happens very rarely. So now let's use this idiom in an answer to an IELTS speaking question. Let's pretend the examiner says, "How often do you eat out at restaurants?" Well, you could say something like this: "Not very often, maybe once in a blue moon." So this simply means it's very rare that I eat out at restaurants. I usually cook at home because it's much more affordable and much healthier. But if there's a special occasion or I'm meeting friends, I'll definitely go out for a nice meal. So this is a great idiom to use to talk about things that you rarely do. Now, it could be anything. It could be going out, it could be seeing someone, or even eating a certain type of food. Let's move on to the fourth idiom now, which is pull someone's leg. Now, this one means to joke or to tease someone in a playful way. Now, note with this idiom, it's used to talk about a situation that isn't serious. So let's pretend that the examiner says, "When was the last time something made you laugh?" Well, you could say something like this: "Actually, just a few days ago, my friend told me this ridiculous story about how he got lost in his own neighborhood, but then I realized he was just pulling my leg." So that simply means he was just joking in a very playful way and he wasn't being serious. Now, note with this idiom that pull is a verb. So when we're using it in a real sentence, we have to think about the tense. We have to think about the grammar. And that's why in this one, we have said pulling, not pull. Because when we have the verb to be, we normally need a verb ing. So always just be aware of that. So just remember that this idiom is used when someone is just joking about something or trying to trick you in a fun way. It's not used to describe serious lies or arguments. All right, let's move on to idiom number 5, which is think outside the box. So let's pretend that you're trying to think of something and you're only thinking within this box, within this area. Do you think you're thinking creatively or not creatively? Well, probably not creatively. So think outside the box. If you go outside that box, well, that means to think in a creative or a different way, to think in a way that's not just the normal or the obvious way. So let's pretend that the examiner says to you something like, "Do you think creativity is important in the workplace?" Now, this is probably more like a part 3 question. So you could say something like this: "Definitely, in many jobs, you need to think outside the box to solve problems or to come up with new ideas, especially in areas like marketing or design." So this is simply saying that in many jobs, you need to think creatively. You can't just use a very basic or normal way of thinking. You need to be innovative. You need to be creative. You need to think differently. So the next time you want to describe someone being creative or doing something in a new way, just say they know how to think outside the box. It's a great idiom to use. All right, let's move on to idiom number 6, which is on the same page. Now, just think about this for a second. If two people are on the same page, if they are reading the same page in a book, what do you think that could mean? Well, the meaning is to agree or to think the same way about something as someone else. So if two people are on the same page, that means they agree or they think the same way about a certain topic or thing. So let's pretend the examiner says, "Is it important to communicate well in the workplace?" Well, you could say something like this. And by the way, this would probably also be a part 3 question. So you could say, "Definitely. Good communication helps make sure everyone's on the same page." So this means if people are talking, if they are communicating, this can help to make sure everyone is thinking the same thing or the same way about a certain topic. If people don't understand the plan or goal, It's very easy for mistakes to happen, and this could also lead to ... and then you would continue your answer. So use this idiom when you want to say that you and someone else agree or understand things the same way. It's great for topics like teamwork and relationships. All right, let's move on to idiom number 7 now, which is go the extra mile. So just think about this. If you go the extra mile, if you walk an extra mile, if you run an extra mile, what could that mean about you? Well, the meaning is to make more effort than expected or to do more than what is required. So if someone goes the extra mile, they are doing more than is necessary. They go past what is necessary. So let's pretend that the examiner says, what qualities make someone a good employee? And again, this would probably be a part 3 question. So you could say something like this. I think one important quality is being willing to go the extra mile. So that simply means, if necessary, you will make more effort than is required. You will do more than what is required. So for example, finishing your tasks properly is good, but someone who stays a bit longer or helps others really stands out and makes themselves someone that others would want to work with. So if you want to describe someone who really puts in the effort, or if that person is you, this is the perfect idiom to use. Let's move on to idiom number 8 now, which is the ball is in your court. Now just pretend that you are playing tennis and someone hits the ball to you. The ball is in your court. What could this mean? What could this be talking about? Well, the meaning is it's your turn to make a decision or to take action. Because think about it, if the ball is in your court when you're playing tennis, it's your turn to hit the ball back. It's your turn to take action. Let's pretend the examiner says, is it important to be honest in a relationship? Now, this would be a part 3 question as well. So you could say something like this. Yes, I think honesty is key, or honesty is very important. If you're open and tell the truth, then the ball is in the other person's court. So this simply means it's the other person's turn to make a decision or take action. So you can see here that we don't have to say your court. We can change your and use anything. We could say something like his court, her court, or like we've done here, we have said the other person's court. It's up to them how they want to respond, and honestly, that's all you can do. Be clear and honest. After that, it's ... and then you continue your answer. So you can use this idiom when it's someone else's turn to decide or take action. You could even use this one to say the ball's in my court to talk about yourself. Let's move on to the next idiom now, which is bite the bullet. Now just think about this. You've got a bullet and you bite it. What could that possibly mean? Well, the meaning is to do something difficult or unpleasant that you've been avoiding. Because just think about it, biting a bullet, it's probably not going to be very fun and not very pleasant. Now, this idiom comes from old wartime medicine, where soldiers would literally bite on a bullet during surgery if there were no drugs or no medicine available. Now, let's have a look at how we can put this into an answer. Have you ever had to do something you didn't want to do? Well, you could say something like this. Yes, recently I had to go to the dentist after putting it off for months. If you put something off, that means you keep delaying it. You keep saying, no, I'm not going to do it today. I will do it later. I really hate going, but the pain got worse, so I had to bite the bullet and just make an appointment. So if you say something like this, that you had to bite the bullet and go to the dentist, well, that means for you, going to the dentist is something unpleasant and you don't really like it and you've been avoiding it. You've been putting it off. So you can use this one when you have to do something hard, but you know it must be done. Now, please note that when you're saying this one, you need to stress bite. So you would say bite the bullet, not bite the bullet. Okay, so remember, we stress the word bite the bullet. All right, let's move on to idiom number 10 now, which is a blessing in disguise. Now, a blessing is a good thing, and a disguise is something that tries to hide something. What do you think that could mean? Well, the meaning of this idiom is something that seems bad at first. It looks bad at first, but it turns out to be good later. And in life, this often happens. Things happen that look bad, but later it turns out that this thing that actually happened had a positive result or was good. So let's pretend the examiner gives you this topic for part 2. Describe a time when something didn't go as planned. Well, you could have something like this in your answer. Last year, I didn't get the internship I applied for. I was really disappointed at the time, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. So this is saying, I didn't get the internship, so I thought it was bad, but it was actually a good thing. A few weeks later, I found a much better opportunity that helped me learn more and ... So this is a great example of where you could use a blessing in disguise. Something negative happens and you think it's negative for a few weeks, and then later something good happens, and then you realize it was actually good that you didn't get that internship. So use this idiom when something goes wrong, but it ends up being a good thing at the end. It's great for, personal stories where things don't really go your way, but they turn out better than expected. So they were 10 idioms. If you want to learn 10 phrasal verbs to improve your speaking, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching. Take care and see you in the next lesson.